Welcome Eric Pittman from the FDA. Eric started his career with the agency in counterterrorism in 2002 in the Chicago District Office. While in Chicago, he worked many high-profile cases with medical products and food. In 2007, he became the resident in charge of the South Bend, Indiana resident post, and he continued to work in all commodity areas in both foreign and domestic arena. In 2010, he went back to the Chicago district as supervisor, and in 2011 won FDA Supervisor of the Year. He became a branch director of ORA headquarters in 2012 and created the new Produce Safety Network in response to the Food Safety Modernization Act. In 2014, Eric became a division director in HQ, and in 2018 moved to his current position as Program Division Director of Bioresearch Monitoring. Eric is currently stationed in Chicago and has the honor of leading a very talented group of investigators and administrative professionals in the division, which he stretched from Detroit to Hawaii and American Samoas. So I'd like to introduce you to Eric. Eric will be speaking on the current state of what's going on with the FDA, and at the end we'll have about 15 minutes for a Q&A, so please start to fill in those questions as we go along. And just to let you know, we have a hard stop time at 2 p.m., so we will be giving the questions to Eric to look over them and give some response afterwards. So please continue to ask your questions. I'd like to turn this over to Eric, and thank you.
All right. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody, depending upon where you are in the country. As was said, my name is Eric Pittman. I am the Program Division Director for Bioresearch Monitoring West. I am stationed in Chicago District. Today, I'm actually sitting at my house in my basement office in Indiana. So we're going to talk today a little bit about what's happened over the past year from March of last year. And right at the end, we're going to talk a little bit about where we are at with the new good laboratory practice regulations and things like that. So everything that I am going to talk about actually is public record, it is out there if you want to dig for it. But we decided to put this presentation together really to discuss, what we have done, because I think we need to tell our story. Because we have done some amazing work over the past year, and I think you'll see that when we go through some of the slides. And I wanted to be ready for any questions that we may get from the public after COVID. So let's go ahead and get started here. So the title is Resiliency Road Trip. So we wanted to kind of take a look at where we have been over the past year, what we have done, and where we're going. Because some of you may know, as of July 1st of this year, we're back to doing inspections all across the country. And I'll be honest with you, in fact, I've actually done 2 inspections since July 1st. I've been out in California, and I've done one up in Michigan. So we are actually out doing inspections right now. So all right, so these are some of the things that we're going to talk about today. We're going to really talk about what we accomplished during the pandemic, because it's important. We were not just sitting around watching Netflix, waiting for, the pandemic to be over. So we want to discuss what we did during the pandemic and what we are doing during the pandemic. We want to talk about the resiliency roadmap, which you may have heard Dr. My mind just went blank. I apologize. Dr. Woodcock talk about a few weeks ago, which is available on FDA.gov. And we'll talk a little bit about our next steps as well as those GLP regulations. So just so you know where we're going to go over the next 40 minutes or so. So I know most of you know this, but I think it's really, really important to remind everybody. So FDA's mission is a huge mission. And if you look at our mission and our scope, over all of the United States government, I think we have the largest scope of, maybe outside of the Department of Defense, of any agency within the FDA. So FDA protects the public health. We do that by ensuring the safety and effectiveness of human and vet drugs, medical devices, vaccines, biologic products. But we're not only responsible for the safety and security of those products, we also have cosmetics. We also have dietary supplements, electromagnetic radiation, which, some of you may not know, we actually regulate those. That's everything from X-ray machines, MRI machines, microwave ovens, and I know probably none of us have these anymore, CD players, DVD players that you use at your house. Actually, the lasers that are in there are under 21 CFR subpart J, and we actually regulate those. As well as after President Obama signed the Family Smoking Prevention Act, we now regulate tobacco products, also pre-market and post-market on tobacco products. So not only clinical trials, but also on the post-market side, the sale of tobacco products. We have a lot of tools in our toolbox that we can use to, make sure that we're fulfilling our mission. Inspections, by far, are the most important part of our toolkit. They are the best way for us to make sure that we are fulfilling our mission. So just remember that as we move forward here. So our inspectional jurisdiction, if you look at the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, we have the major sectors that are identified here: vaccines, human and animal drugs. And remember, when we're talking about animal drugs, we're talking everything from companion animals like dogs and cats to food-producing animals, cattle, chickens, things like that. Medical device manufacturers, everything from Class 1 toothbrushes to Class 3 life-sustaining devices. Blood banks, plasmapheresis facilities. Food processing facilities, everything from the little mom and pop facility that you may see on the side of the road, all the way up to those multinational corporations that make some of your favorite snacks that you have at night. Animal food processors, compounding pharmacies. These are all under our inspectional jurisdiction, but there's also some other things that we inspect. We inspect foreign manufacturing and processing sites for all of the FDA-regulated products sold in the United States. And that is not a small undertaking. If we have about 300,000 facilities in the domestic arena in the continental United States, our territories, Alaska and Hawaii, that we inspect, just think if we look at all of the countries in the world that are shipping things into the United States, we also go out and do foreign inspections, risk-based foreign inspections at those locations also. Obviously, something near and dear to my heart, clinical investigators and facilities conducting studies with human subjects, obviously clinical trials, businesses that manufacture, market, and distribute tobacco products, laboratories that conduct studies in animals and microorganisms, i.e. GLP facilities. And we also regulate imported products that are in foreign trade zones or that come into the country at one of the airports, one of our seaports, one of the land ports. So those are a lot of facilities that a small number of us regulate products. Our inspections are varied, and I know one of the questions we got relates to number 2, but we do really 3 types of inspections that you have probably heard about in the past. For cause inspections, quote unquote. Those are triggered when we have a compliance issue at a facility where we have to go in and look at a specific problem, or there may have been a serious complaint that's come to FDA's attention, and either the product center or the division may go out and do a for cause inspection of that facility or location. We also have pre-approval, pre-market, pre-licensure inspections that are conducted as necessary as part of bringing a new product onto the market. So obviously we have pre-market approvals, we have pre-market clearance for devices, We have NDAs, GDUFA inspections for drugs. We have pre-license inspections for biologics and vaccines and things like that. So those are another type of inspections that we do. And then third, and just so you know, these are in no level of importance. But the third type of inspection that we do are those routine surveillance inspections. Those are the COVID notwithstanding, when, we just show up and knock on the door and say, hi, how you doing? We're from the FDA and we're here to do an inspection. Those are really used to monitor ongoing compliance with GMPs, those current good manufacturing practices. So if you think of GMPs as post-market, we also do routine surveillance inspections of pre-market facilities such as Part 58 animal study facilities under good laboratory practices. So those are also normal routine surveillance inspections that we do, COVID notwithstanding. So this next question, hopefully this is going to work. We have a poll that I wanted to try to get a little bit of interaction, and I'm hoping this is going to work. So if we could, I'm going to go ahead and launch it. So basically, this question is, do you think FDA's ability to inspect facilities was impacted by the pandemic? Yes, no, or not sure. We'll give you just about a minute to answer that question. And hopefully, I think everybody is seeing some data showing up as we're moving forward. We're about halfway through. We'll give everybody about 15, 20 more seconds. Looks like about 3/4 of you have voted at this point in time. 10 more seconds. All right, we'll go ahead and close that. So yes, actually 81% of you said yes, 12% of you said no, and 7% said you weren't sure. I can guarantee you that FDA's ability to inspect facilities was impacted by the pandemic. Not that we did not want to go out and do inspections. What our issue was, we were dealing with 50 different states and hundreds of different localities within those states that had different requirements for work. So just think about your local area where you live right now. So I live in Northwest Indiana. So I'm thinking about the Lake County, Porter County, LaPorte County area between Chicago and South Bend, Indiana. If you went to each one of those counties, there were different requirements for facilities to be open. There were manufacturing facilities in those 3 counties right there that, based on requirements of the county, that were not allowed to be open. They were allowed to be open. You might not have been able to have visitors show up. Only people that worked there were able to come on. So we were dealing with that across 50 states, our territories, across the country. So just imagine how many localities that we had to deal with during COVID, and we're still dealing with, especially as the Delta variant starts picking up, in trying to do our inspection. So I can definitely say that we were impacted on what we were able to do. So when we start talking about COVID-19 and the public health emergency, the previous administration, obviously, you're all aware of Operation Warp Speed, President Trump's operation to bring a COVID vaccine as quickly as possible to the American public. And I will tell you, it was amazing how fast that vaccine was developed and clinical trials were started, and that emergency use authorization was granted to the companies that have it right now. When we're starting to talk about the context of COVID-19 and the PHE, that public health emergency, we played a tremendous role in the whole of government effort to address this pandemic. Many people before now, when I would tell them what I did with FDA, when you talk about food and drugs, it's pretty easy to understand what FDA is when you talk about food and drugs. Medical devices, it gets a little bit more difficult. But when you start talking about clinical trials and non-clinical trials, a majority of Americans really have no idea what those are. They might think that they might know what a clinical trial is, but they really don't know what goes on behind the scenes of those preclinical and clinical trials. And because of COVID and the public health emergency, what we do in FDA relating to animal studies as well as clinical trials became front and center. I had never saw so many news broadcasters talk about clinical trials in my almost 20 years with FDA. So it was refreshing for the general public to see what we are doing to help protect the public health. We were out there expediting access to COVID-19 medical countermeasures for detection, i.e. testing, protection against, i.e. PPE, personal protective equipment, and treatment of COVID-19, drugs, medical devices, things like that. We were out there supporting the stability and quality of medical products and the food supply chain. And we were ensuring that the agency's decision were following as open and transparent of a process guided by science to promote confidence in what we are doing. By and large, FDA is a science-based organization. And our previous commissioner, Dr. Stephen Hahn, I think went on record multiple times, as well as the director of the Center for Biologics, Dr. Marks, talked about how we are going, sorry, my other computer's going into sleep mode, talked about how we are using science to guide how we are going to address EUAs when it comes to vaccines and things like that. So I really think we did an outstanding job in the face of uncertainty in something that the United States has not seen since the pandemic of 1918 and the Spanish flu. What were some of the other things we were doing? During the pandemic, we identified inspections that were considered to be mission critical, i.e. Those that you can see right there, those four different factors. Those are mission critical inspections that we determined on a case-by-case basis that required our staff to still go out and do inspections. They were required to go out there to make sure that the public was still receiving breakthrough therapies or regenerative medicines, to make sure that the products that require follow-ups due to recalls, or if there is evidence of serious adverse events or outbreaks to a foodborne illness, that we were out there doing those inspections. That if there is a product that was out there used to treat a serious disease or a medical condition where there was no substitute, that we were out there making sure that those products were being inspected on the post-market side, and those inspections were being conducted on the pre-market side to allow our centers to make those application decisions. And then obviously any product that was related to FDA's COVID-19 response. So those would be preclinical animal inspections. Those would be clinical inspections, 1, 2, and 3 clinical trials. The application inspections for those EUAs, all of those things were being considered mission critical. And our staff was out there when everybody was working at home, when we were talking about, our first responders being out in the hospitals, and our police and our EMTs and paramedics, our doctors, our nurses, even grocery store workers who were out there on the front lines. We were also out there getting on airplanes, going places, doing those inspections to make sure that these mission critical products and treatments were able to get through. So if you're wondering where some of these graphics came from, these are actually available on FDA.gov under the Resiliency Roadmap. And you will have a copy of this presentation, which will have the link to that presentation and that Resiliency Roadmap. So if you want to look at any more of this in depth, you will be able to. So have no fear about that. Mission critical inspections. So since March of 2020 until March of 2021, you can see what we were doing. I'm going to tell you, in March of 2020, I was coming back. I am the diplomat to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD. I am the FDA delegate to the Working Party on Good Laboratory Practices. I was coming back from Japan at that time because our meeting that year with all the delegates from around the world was in Japan. And as I was starting to land at O'Hare, we were starting to see, airports starting to close down because of COVID. We were starting to see flights being turned back to other locations in the world. So it was kind of scary, and I'm sure each of you remember where you were, when the United States started shutting down, just like the Kennedy assassination, when the Challenger blew up, when President Reagan was shot in the 80s. This is going to be one of those things that I always remember. While we were sitting there, and we're going to talk a little bit about it in a few slides, but when we got back, I was talking with Chrissy Cochran, who is my supervisor. She's the director of the Office of Bioresearch Monitoring, where I'm the program division director, along with my colleague Ann Johnson, who's a program division director for Bioresearch Monitoring East, which is Detroit to the East Coast. We were sitting there thinking about, what are we going to do? How are we going to continue to get information to the centers for them to make decisions based on applications that were out there? And we came up with something called the Remote Regulatory Assessment. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But during this time, we went from full bore doing, thousands of inspections a month to only being able to do mission critical inspections. And you can see the number of inspections that were done on the screen in that March to September and October to March 2021 timeframe. And I have to point out that orange color, that orangish color that's at the top, that's our group. That is Bioresearch Monitoring. And I have to say, we are the smallest group within ORA, within the Office of Regulatory Affairs. We are the smallest group between the people that inspect foods, the people that inspect drugs, devices, biologics. We are the smallest group, and you can see the number of inspections that we did during the pandemic. We did 408 inspections that were deemed mission critical to make sure that the public got treatments for COVID, other treatments, new molecular entities, medical countermeasures, PPE. We were out there doing these inspections to make sure that those products could get to our doctors, our nurses, our EMTs, our police, our firefighters, all of them that were on the front lines, our first responders that needed this equipment and treatments. We were out there doing inspections at that time. And I'm going to tell you, I'm really darned proud of our group. Because like I said, we are the smallest in FDA, and we were still able to go out there and do 408 mission critical inspections. Some of those were actually overseas also. So we were even during this time traveling overseas to do inspections to make sure that we could get those products to our public. So those were mission critical inspections. These are a little bit different. These are prioritized domestic inspections. And these were based on the impact of the pandemic across the United States. So we had a very easy red, yellow, green, that's what RYG means there at the top, categorization of all of the counties in the United States. And if there was a county that had a green designation, which meant that they met certain criteria that were presented in President Trump's reopening of America document at the end of his first term there, we would actually be able to go out and do prioritized domestic inspections. These were ones that were not considered these were ones that were not considered mission critical, but that needed to be done during the pandemic. So as you can see, we still got out and were able to do 777 prioritized domestic inspections, in addition to those mission critical inspections that were done. pointing out bioresearch monitoring at the bottom, there's not as many prioritized domestic inspections that we did during this time because most of our inspections were actually considered mission critical. So if you go back and look at that other screen, you'll see the over 400 that we did during that year time frame were more mission critical than these quote unquote prioritized domestic inspections. So out there for you to take a look at. This is in comparison with the number of inspections that we normally do either internally, FDA employees, or those inspections that are done under contract for FDA by our state and local counterparts. In a normal year, we do somewhere around 35,000 inspections. And as you can see in 2019, that's the breakdown of those 14,000 domestic inspections that we, i.e. FDA, did, almost 4,000 foreign inspections that we, FDA, did, and 17,000 inspections that our state and local counterparts did under contract for us. So you can see there was quite a difference in the actual number of inspections that we were able to do because of COVID. We had to limit where we went and what we could do. So, I mentioned, a little bit talking about remote regulatory assessments. So that is one of our alternative tools that we used to look to do oversight of FDA regulated products over the past year. So we started looking at the 6 existing tools that we had and the authorities that we could use under the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act and 21 CFR that we could use to, really optimize the approaches that we could use in trying to implement our mission over the past year or so. So first of all, we did record reviews. Most of you out there that deal in drugs or biologics know 704A4 authority that FDA can request records to do that, to actually review records, from their office and things like that. So this is one of the ways that we continued to do inspections, not only pre-market inspections, but also post-market inspections. So we were able to look at, pre-market, pre-approval type inspections this way, as well as post-market GMP inspections by using that 704A4 authority for drugs and biologics. Remote assessments. So I talked a little bit about remote regulatory assessments. That was something that the 4 of us in BIMO sat down and came up with in March/April of 2020. And once everybody saw that it was something that was going to work and industry was going to support us doing those remote regulatory assessments, the rest of ORA picked them up and started doing them in food, drugs, devices, biologics, and I did say medical devices. In addition, our friends over in imports were using the Foreign Supplier Verification Regulation, or FSVP, that was part of President Obama's Food Safety Modernization Act that he signed back in 2009, in January of 2009, to look at imported products that were being brought into the country. So FSVP is a tool that's used by our import folks to really look at food and food products that are being brought in to the country. When I say food, I do mean human and animal food because, food is feed and feed is food. It doesn't matter. The same requirements are really out there for animal food and human food, although there are some additional requirements for human food, obviously. But during that time, from March 2020 to March 2021, you can see FDA did approximately 1,200 remote FSVP inspections. So that means that we were out there still looking at the food that was being brought into the country. And that's in addition to, some of the remote regulatory assessments that we did. We did several dozen remote regulatory assessments, not only of foreign manufacturers and foreign sponsors, but also domestic manufacturers and domestic sponsors here to help get those applications out to the center for them to look at. We leveraged information by states, local, tribal, and territorial regulatory partners. We have several MOUs, obviously, between the several states, several local, as well as our tribal governments. And all of those are available to be looked at on FDA.gov. But we were able to continue to do these. And we use human food because that's really where we do a majority of our information sharing in the domestic arena, because there aren't too many state and local counterparts that have a drug, medical device, biologic, bioresearch monitoring group within their Department of Public Health. So it's mainly food. There are a couple standouts. Obviously, California, Texas have medical products under their jurisdiction also. But you can see our state, local, tribal, and territory partners were still able to conduct almost 4,300 human food and almost 1,300 animal food inspections on behalf of FDA. So we were still out there helping, with the help of our state and local counterparts, out there doing those inspections to make sure that we're upholding our mission. We also had several partnerships with multiple other government agencies. You can see on here all of the different types of partners and the different programs that we were working on and that we still are working on over the past year in relation to COVID. Everything from, National Institutes of Health, the USDA, the Department of Justice, Cancer Institute, CDC, Department of Defense, all of these different groups, we were working to ensure that we could, help speed innovation, get inspections out there, share scientific information, all under the guise of our public health emergency and using our existing MOUs or new memorandums of understanding that were created because of the COVID-19. Mutual recognition agreements. Mutual recognition agreements are used a lot through Europe, and we definitely use these, to work with our European counterparts and our foreign counterparts around the world to share information on medical products and food products across the country. As I mentioned, I work very closely with all of the OECD member and full adherent countries. And I know during the past year, 18 months, we have been working very closely talking about GLP facilities, not only in the United States, but around the world, and sharing that information that we can share according to our memorandums of understanding and our information sharing agreements, so that we could help speed and help inform different governments across the country or across the world, as well as them helping us inform our centers to make decisions based on applications and compliance for those products that were before us. So very, very important. And it also allowed us to continue to get information on medical product manufacturers all over the world, because some of these countries were still able to go in and do inspections of manufactured product. So we were still able to use that to make sure that products were being created in accordance with our good manufacturing practices. Sampling and analytical testing. This is always a foundational aspect of how we enforce the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act and the associated regulations, as well as meeting our mission to protect the public health. You can see all of the compliance actions that we had here. Not only were we collecting, samples of hand sanitizers, we were dealing with detention without physical examinations of different products that were coming into the country, not only medical products, but also food products that we had to deal with. And this is one of the tools that we can use to help protect the public health. And then our import colleagues, have a tremendously important and difficult job. And as you can see, these are actually two of our import colleagues. They will help and they will work with compliance to refuse entry of unsafe imported products into the United States. They go out and they do Obviously, these are staged photos, but they go out and they do field exams of products that are coming into the United States, not only food products, but medical products and tobacco products, to make sure that they meet the rules and regulations of the Food and Drug Administration prior to them being released into domestic commerce. So it is very important. And these are all risk-based evaluations that we do. Our import branch has something called Predict, and it is a computer program that looks at 100% of the actual line entries that come into the United States every day. On a yearly basis, there are somewhere upwards of 55 to 60 million lines of FDA-regulated product that come into the United States. And as you can imagine, we just don't have the staff to look at every one of those products that are coming in there. But this computer program has a risk-based algorithm that looks at the history of the country, history of the company that's making it, the history of the product itself, and evaluates that to determine whether or not we need to have a physical evaluation of that product. And because of that, we are actually able to look at 100% of products that come in the United States, either using our Predict program or our investigators that work in the import branch. So, base case scenario, something that Dr. Woodcock just put out, and I mentioned it at the beginning of this presentation. As of July 1st, we are going back to base case, which means we are out there doing inspections. And like I mentioned, even me, a program division director, I got on an airplane, I flew out to California, did some inspections, came back, wrote some reports, went up to, got in a car, went up to Michigan, did some inspections up there. So we are out there doing inspections with the caveat that these are all still pre-announced. So even those types of inspections that aren't normally pre-announced, like GLP inspections, we are still currently pre-announcing them to, see what the requirements are to come into your facility and things like that. So you can read all about base case scenario on FDA.gov. I don't want to spend too much time on that, but other than to remind everybody that as of July 1st, we have resumed standard operations. Now, with the Delta variant and what's come out with the CDC at this point in time, nothing has changed as of this point in time, but we shall see as we continue to move forward. Foreign inspections, we do, as you saw in 19, we did 4,000 foreign inspections. As of right now, only mission critical inspections will continue because it's very hard to get people visas to go into foreign countries. And the people that we have had go overseas over the past 18 months, sometimes they have to go and sit in a hotel room for 2 weeks, isolated, getting all of the food delivered before they are allowed to actually go out and do inspections. So we're not going back to routine inspections just yet in the foreign arena. Those ACO approval, that is the Assistant Commissioner of Operations. And for those of you that are familiar, FDA ORA has a new Assistant Commissioner for Medical Products by the name of Elizabeth Miller. Elizabeth is a PharmD by trade and came to us as of last April from the United States Pharmacopoeia. The Assistant Commissioner for Food Products is Michael Rogers, who has been with FDA for 20, 25 years, I think, at this point in time. Moving forward, these are what we're doing. Our inspectional focus, pre-approval, pre-market, pre-license inspections. These are the ones that we are going to hit first because we have 13,000 applications that have come in since March of 2020. Some of them are under the UFAs. Some of them are not, but we have all of those that we have to address. Obviously, we're not going to go out and do 13,000 pre-market application inspections, but we do have those that we have to deal with. Then we're going to move on and deal with for cause, and then we're going to deal with the surveillance inspection. So does that mean we're going to go from 1 to 2 to 3? No, it does not. That means that we are going to be looking in a geographic area where we have staff and where we can travel staff, what is available, what the due dates are for those, and we are going to, try to hit those pre-inspections first, hit the for cause next, and hit the surveillance third. But we could be hitting any of those at any point in time based on the staff and the inspections that we have available. We are talking a little bit about prioritization right now. So I wanted to share with you publicly what is available on FDA's website so that you can actually see what we are prioritizing in each individual program. So like I said, this is on FDA.gov, so you can look at this anytime that you want, but you can see here what we are prioritizing, the tier 1, the tier 2, the tier 3. So what is mission critical, what is the higher priority, and what is the lower priority? And you can look, depending upon what you work in, exactly what we are looking at to do inspection-wise for the remainder of this fiscal year, and as we move into fiscal year 22, October 1. So you can take a look at that. So that's kind of where we're at. That's where we're going. Now, I just want to give you a quick update. And when I say a quick update on GLP regulations, we're only talking about three slides here. So as all of you know, or most of you probably do know, when a new regulation comes into the public arena, it starts as an idea. And I always like to refer people, I'm sure there's some people on this phone call that are probably old enough to remember the old, how a bill becomes a law, the old Schoolhouse Rocks. And I actually use that quite a bit when I'm teaching our new hires and talk to them about laws and regulations. But, there was an idea that we needed to update the Part 58, Good Laboratory Practice regulations. Obviously, they do need to be updated. They are rather old at this point in time. So we actually, as required by rulemaking regulations, we actually put out an advance notice of proposed rulemaking, which when you get these slides, they're hyperlinked to that. So if you want to read them, you can. Put that out, the notice of proposed rulemaking, and then now we're working on the final rule. So what you can see, and this obviously is not a real picture, but you can kind of see what it looks like. The comment period on the GLP rulemaking closed on 21 January of 2017. We received 78 different submissions with thousands of comments. And when I say thousands of comments, we are talking well over 3,000 comments. We are currently answering each one of those comments, and we are getting close to sending it to HHS and OPM to review it so it can be published. So that's where we're at right now. Obviously, COVID put another wrench in moving forward because a lot of the evaluation of comments and writing of the regulation stopped because of everything that we were doing with COVID, because obviously the public health emergency was much more pressing at that point in time than dealing with some of the comments on the GLP. So with that, that is my presentation today. Not bad. I said it would be about 45 minutes. I think there was about 2 minutes of introduction there in the beginning. So I think I actually hit it at 44 minutes instead of 45. So I am extremely happy with that. And it does look like we have gotten some questions in here. So I am going to turn it over to our moderators to go through the questions.
Great, thanks, Eric, for enlightening us on what FDA has been up to and taking us through that presentation. And I think, the couple of questions that have come in, it looks like you've touched on them. But I'll ask the first one that we showed up was, and again, it was related to something you already covered. Can we expect that FDA will continue to contact labs prior to inspection? If so, considering FDA's backlog, how long do you think that practice will continue? And I'll let you answer that one. Go ahead.
No problem. Tom, that is a great question. I think you and I have talked before, actually, because I remember your last name since I went to college at Purdue. So I went to pharmacy school there. So Field Alert 57, which is it's an internal document, but Field Alert 57 talks about pre-announcement of any and all inspections during the public health emergency. So if you read into what I just said, you'll kind of know the answer. So as long as the public health emergency is ongoing, we will be pre-announcing inspections. When the president decides that the public health emergency is over, then we will go back to not pre-announcing those types of inspections that we normally do not pre-announce. So I can't give you an exact date, obviously, because the public health emergency is in flux at this point in time. But I do think the public health emergency will be continuing for quite a while. And obviously, once we will not be pre-announcing anymore, we will make a concerted effort to get out there and let industry know that we will not be pre-announcing at that point in time. So I hope that answers your question.
And just to follow up on that, Eric, you had indicated that you are doing on-site inspections. So would you also pre-announce the on-site inspections, or would that just you would show up for those?
No, we are pre-announcing everything. So
okay.
The remote regulatory assessments, obviously those, we kind of have to pre-announce those because we have to, deal with that. But we are pre-announcing on-site inspections also. There are a few certain instances where we will not pre-announce, and that is really when it is an emergency, like when we find something out and we have to get in there within an hour or two, or if we're worrying about what we call fleeting evidence, obviously, like somebody shredding everything before we get there. In that case, we might not pre-announce, but that doesn't happen too often. So.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks. So moving to the next one, what is the FDA's opinion regarding the appropriateness of remote versus on-site QA audits when monitoring ongoing preclinical and clinical trials? And are remote audits considered equally employable across preclinical and clinical?
Jeff, that is an outstanding question. Holy mackerel. This is something that we deal with all the time, and we are fighting. Well, we're not fighting. We're fighting with internally, what they actually can do. So we don't do remote inspections. We do remote regulatory assessments or remote record review. We continue to state that a remote record review or a remote regulatory assessment, which really means the same thing, is not equivalent to an inspection because an inspection, and for those of you that have done things remotely versus on-site, there's a difference between the two. And although a remote monitoring, a remote assessment is a good tool, it does not replace an on-site inspection. And I will tell you, it is what we have seen is remote regulatory assessments are actually taking 2 to 3 times longer than a normal on-site inspection would take. When a normal on-site inspection may take 4 to 5 days, we're finding that it's taking 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks to actually get those done because we're having to, request records, wait for those records to get back. And while we're waiting for those records to get back, we're not able to do other things that we normally would while we're on site with somebody. So we do not consider a remote regulatory assessment to be the same as an inspection. Also because we, number one, do not show our credentials and we do not issue an FDA notice of inspection. So if you look at 704A of the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, an inspection is defined as, although it doesn't say the words on-site, it does say that you will present credentials and issue a written notice of inspection. And it's kind of hard to do that electronically because it is actually against the federal law for me to show you my credentials over a video. Are remote audits considered equally employable across preclinical and clinical? We have also discussed this internally, and I am going to say that we find that if you're just looking at data, there's no difference in looking at preclinical data versus clinical data. Where I think there's a big difference in remote versus on-site is, I just did a GLP inspection a few weeks ago. There is nothing that can replace that walking around the facility, that going to receiving, that going to the animal care facilities, that going to where they wash the cages, where they store the food, where they store the investigational product for clinical or non-clinical studies. Nothing really, replaces that actual physical walking and taking that regulatory tour of that facility. So I think, looking at data, there's not too much of a difference because, we can look at data. But when you actually have to figure in that physical part that you can't do because of, being remote, I think that's where it tends to lack a little bit. And I will tell you, back in 2004, I actually did an inspection where I was sitting in one state and I had somebody 15 states over, literally 15 states over, that was walking around with a video camera, and I was actually talking to them. And this is the time when, video cameras, if you remember, were this big, and you had to hold them up on your shoulder with a big VHS tape. And I was telling them, okay, now look down here, look over there. And I mean, it is very difficult, and it's not as, I just don't think it's as good if you're not able to actually physically walk around and do that when you need to do that part of the inspection. So I hope that answers your question, Jeff. And obviously, if you have additional questions, more than happy to talk. Well, I can just, Jeff has a couple other ones here. I think we talked about the pre-announcing GLP inspections. It will not be permanent. We will not go to a permanent basis of announcing GLP inspections. I can promise you that. So I'll let you go ahead and pick which question you want to hit now.
Okay, so the next one, I think, let me see that you haven't touched on. Do they recommend for GCP and GLP audits doing the next audit cycle earlier than stated in the company SOPs?
That's a very good question. I've actually had that question asked to me twice with that. Well, actually, both inspections that I've just done in the past couple of weeks, the companies both asked me that. You know what? It's a risk-based evaluation that I think the company needs to do. If they're not finding anything remotely, then do they need to move it up? Maybe not. I think it just depends on, the same things that we look at on a risk-based evaluation. It depends on the history of the company. It depends on the history of the principal investigator if we're talking about a clinical facility. It depends on, the history that they've had and the difficulty of making a product and or following that protocol would actually help the risk analysis or the risk group determine whether or not they need to up that schedule. So it really depends, and I hate to say that, but it really does depend on what you're looking at.
Okay. What do you think about using videos to do inspections of animal rooms, feed rooms, etc.?
What we have talked about that. There's a lot of interesting issues, and I mean, I know there's a lot of GLP facilities out there, and how many of you want us walking around with a camera? I can probably guarantee you that 100% of GLP facilities don't want me walking around with a camera, popping pictures of stuff. And I tend to really think that, having somebody using a video camera or some sort of video apparatus at the bequest of the FDA makes it a little difficult because, when you walk into a facility, I don't just look directly at the animals. I look at floors, I look at walls, I look at ceilings, I look at the entryway, I look at, gaps of doors and things like that, you really can't see when you are looking at a video. So, I mean, I think it does have a place. I think it can be used in addition to other things, but I definitely, I can tell you that will never replace an on-site inspection from FDA at least.
Okay, thanks. Maybe time for one more. This one says, when you say information from other health agencies are considered, what information does the FDA use from these agencies, I would guess? For example, go ahead, Eric.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I apologize. I wasn't looking at the question. I thought you were done. Please finish. I apologize.
No, it just says, for examples, does FDA request the inspection report from other health agencies, for example, Health Canada?
Yes, and in fact, I just sent a request to one of my colleagues over in the European Union yesterday for the last inspectional record for a GLP facility overseas. So yes, we do. We requested from them, they requested from us, and depending upon the information sharing agreements that we have, they will be redacted appropriately for commercial, confidential, and trade secret information, and we will share those records. We will share. We will have telephone calls and share information that we have verbally on the companies. We will talk about, what, compliance actions may be occurring. And I'll tell you, when you look at the OECD, I go back to this. Every 3 months, I publish a document for all of the OECD member countries as part of the requirement for us to be part of the OECD, of all of the GLP inspections that have been conducted and the compliance status of every GLP facility in the United States, its territories, and its territories. So, we share a lot behind the scenes, and it really has been very helpful during COVID to make sure that we are able to get the information that we can get to continue to make decisions as we move forward. So hopefully that answers that.
Great, thanks, Eric. It looks like we're about out of time. We'll take the rest of these questions and forward them on to you so that you can take a look at and answer anything that maybe have not been addressed through the conversations. But we really want to thank you for presenting the slides to us today and giving us the background on where FDA has been and what they've been doing over the pandemic. Appreciate it.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody. And always feel free to reach out to me. I don't know everything, but the wonderful thing is I do know the people that know everything. So we can try to get you answers whenever you need it. So thank you very much. And everybody have a wonderful week.
Thank you.